So let's talk about some of your efforts as Attorney General. I just want to start with the news today, which is that President Trump has taken to the Supreme Court his effort to deport Venezuelan migrants using the Enemy Aliens Act, which means he wouldn't have to follow sort of basic rule of law standards for hearings, for charges, etc. Is there, in your view, any legal basis for using the Enemy Aliens Act now? And what are your thoughts on this case?
I don't think it's an appropriate invocation of the Alien Enemies Act. That's a wartime act. We're not at war. We're not at Congress hasn't declared war against Venezuela. We're in peacetime. So I know why they want to use it because of the additional authority that it provides for them, the ability to bypass due process and to do things that you would do in, obviously during the duress and challenge of wartime that you can't do in peacetime. But it's inappropriate in my view. And the judge has made clear at the district court level his deep frustration with their potential lack of compliance with his order. Um, the Trump administration has a tendency and a pattern of trying to mainstream fringe theories.
Mhm.
This idea that you can have invoke the Alien Enemies Act that has only in the history of the United States been invoked during wartime, that you can invoke it during peacetime, and then you can say we're at war with this immigrant invasion. It's just not appropriate, and don't believe there's a legal basis for it. And he can go wherever he wants to try to seek relief. I don't believe any court is going to side with him on this, but I believe in our courts. They're stress tested, and they're being intimidated, and we have people calling them activist judges and trying to impeach them and threatening with defunding them. But they are a co-equal branch of government, right there in Article 3 of our U.S. Constitution, and I believe they will do their job. They will look at the facts, look at the law, and when they do on this case, I believe they will not support the Trump administration's position.
Let's talk for a moment about the judiciary. In addition to what you just acknowledged, that the Trump administration has tried to defy this federal judge in the case regarding these Venezuelan migrants, we've also seen the administration sign executive orders targeting specific law firms to deprive them of the ability to go to federal court, which would effectively make them unable to take clients, put them out of business. As you alluded to separately, the Speaker of the House has said that there's so much frustration around the courts blocking some policies that, well, we as Congress have the power to eliminate some of these courts, defund these courts. And in some hearings, the administration itself has argued essentially that you, as a judge, have no right to tell us, the executive, what to do or even to know what we're doing. All of this seems to amount to an attack on the whole judiciary, the ability of the judicial branch to act as a check on the executive. Do you agree with that assessment? And can you explain to people, if you do, what really is at stake here?
I believe there's this ongoing attempt to socialize the idea that courts, a co-equal branch of government in the U.S. Constitution, cannot tell the executive branch what to do. That is consistent with the Trump administration's, I'll say euphemistically, a very expansive view of executive power. I'll say, very matter of factly, a view of executive power that is inconsistent and contradictory to the U.S. Constitution. They want more power than the U.S. Constitution provides them. They don't want to honor the co-equal branches of government, whether it be Congress. They try to usurp congressional authority all the time, including the power of the purse, the power to appropriate and spend. They don't want to follow court orders. Courts can and have traditionally for decades and centuries in the United States of America interpreted the law. That's their job, including interpreting the law when it determines that the executive branch is overstepping its authority. That is absolutely a right that they have. If Speaker Johnson is frustrated with all the court orders that are blocking the unlawful conduct of the Trump administration, stop the unlawful conduct. That's how you stop the court orders. It's the unlawful conduct that needs to stop, not the court orders that need to stop. The court is doing its job. They are a neutral arbiter of the law. They look at the facts, they look at the law, they apply it, the chips fall where they may. And they are falling exactly where they should in determining that the Trump administration is violating the law because they are. And so it is a very dangerous game to undermine our judicial branch, to undermine a co equal branch of government. I believe that the judicial branch is very self-interested in maintaining their authority. We saw Chief Justice Roberts speak about that recently, pushing back against threats to impeach judges, saying that that's inappropriate. It can't be that when you agree with the court order, it's a great judge who decided the case right, and when you don't agree, it's an activist judge who should be impeached and defunded. It's just not how it works. That was the same view that some, including Trump, had on elections. If you won, the election was fair. If you lost, the election was rigged, and just that's just not how it is. We're adults. We have to accept the court orders. We have to accept the outcome of elections, the will of the people. Unfortunately, that's not something that this administration and Mr. Trump himself have had a tendency to do.
Let's talk about some of the cases that you've helped bring, including against the funding freeze. So the government, going back, it seems like a year ago now. I think it was just like 6 weeks. The Trump administration froze federal spending, which seems to contradict the Constitution as well, because that's up to Congress. You
Right.
sued over this. Do you want to talk about that case and a little bit about what kind of grants were frozen and the stakes of that?
Yeah, the stakes are so high on that one, and every case is important. All of our 8 cases. And this one, the Office of Management and Budget's memo trying to freeze $3 trillion in congressionally appropriated federal funding that touched every state. And we determined to the tune of $168 billion over the course of 1 year in California alone. That one was very expansive and very dangerous. It touched so many critical sources of funding that help. Exactly who government's supposed to help, our most vulnerable, our children, our sick, our seniors, our poor, folks who need support, who need these services. And um, some of the funding that was at stake is funding for healthcare, for our poor, Medicaid, our for CHIP, our poor children, and particularly for housing, for affordable subsidized housing, for college, for childcare, for public safety grants, for infrastructure funding. This order was so broad; it touched almost everything, every source of funding that the federal government provides, and it was. Um, Exactly what you said. This is congressionally appropriated. Congress has the power of the purse. Congress passed a budget act. It was signed by a president. It is the law. And the US Constitution requires that the existing president take care to carry out and execute what the Congress's laws, including its budget act. And so we believe that it was a violation of the separation of powers. We believe it was a violation of the Take Care Clause, as well as another law that requires certain procedures to be put into to be followed before actions can be taken. And the judge agreed and stopped the freeze and thawed the freeze so that the money flows to our states. And we're grateful for that because this is critical funding, and people's lives, people's health was at jeopardy.
And can I just follow up briefly on that? Because I'd heard from individuals who were meant to get this funding that for a while it still remained frozen after they said lift it. Is it now flowing?
It's flowing, and there
Okay.
was, government doesn't always move at light speed, and,
Right.
and
Okay.
once the freeze is put in place to unfreeze it and to identify all the places, all of the spigots that need to be reopened, that takes time. There were some places where there was a disagreement over whether the funding should flow or not. We had to move to enforce the order twice. Once with respect to Inflation Reduction Act funding and Infrastructure Act funding. Another time right now with FEMA funding. We won the first. We're waiting for an order on the second. But it's such an expansive order. There are some differences of perspective as to whether the order applies to certain areas of funding, and we are being very aggressive in making sure that the order is
Right.
followed.
And I want to say to my audience listening, one of the reasons I'm starting with that case is because it's a reminder that courts are working and there are instances where there is success. So let's move to an
Yes.
area that's a little more challenging, which is Doge and Elon Musk. You have two suits challenging their actions. One I would like to start with is specifically Elon Musk's role. Your case essentially says, who is this dude and what's his job?
That's right.
That's not your language, but this isn't an officially created role, and does he have the authority to do this? The second case says, stop letting them get into Treasury Department payments. This is the most sensitive material. Get out. And the judge did say, get out of the Treasury Department's payment system for now,
Right.
as I understand it. My
Yes.
questions to you are twofold. First, do these cases allow you to understand what these guys are actually doing? Because M- Musk said, I want to find out waste, fraud, and abuse in the system, but he didn't bring accountants. He brought 20-year-old hackers.
Right.
And he has an interest in obtaining the data of the government because I'm just saying hypothetically, he runs an AI that is hungry for that
Mm.
any kind of data, including that data. Through discovery, do you have the power to understand what they actually are doing?
We do have discovery now in one of the cases, so that is very helpful for us to get a better line of sight into everything that they're doing. Sometimes we have certain information, but it's not perfect information, and we need more to understand everything that he's accessing and how he's accessing and what he's doing with it and whether it's being stored or retained. And we did get an order in one of our cases, which was a great order, that prevented access by Musk and his team, and also required them to destroy any information they improperly accessed. They were accessing the Treasury payment system, getting the bank account information, Social Security information of millions of Americans, and everyday Americans understand this, that Elon Musk is a private citizen. He hasn't been elected to anything. He hasn't received one vote from one American for any office. His this so-called Department of Government Efficiency is made up by the executive branch. It's not created by Congress. He hasn't been appointed and confirmed to run any department in the federal government, and it doesn't matter how many billions of dollars you have, how many businesses that you've started. You can't access people's private information. It's wrong. And you need to be accountable, and there needs to be guardrails. And so, our information, Americans' information, is not for Trump to have or Musk to mine. And so we went in to protect the American people's private information. Um, what happens next is going to be important. What our discovery reveals, whether they comply with our discovery requests, and they should, and we believe they will, and what we find is going to be very important as we present it to the court in one of the two cases that you've talked about.
And at this time, there's really no way of knowing. Like the judge said, get out of the Treasury payment system. But at this moment, we don't know if they actually did that. These kids are hackers. Do we?
I mean, they have to follow the court order, and if we
Okay.
have evidence of a violation of the court order, we can move to enforce. We can move for contempt. There can
I
be
see.
civil contempt. People can go to jail for violating the court order. If they're furtively, secretively accessing, and we don't know about it, we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
But courts could create, order audits. They can order proofs and declarations of compliance. And so there's a whole number of just steps that a court can take to make sure that they're not saying one thing and doing another.
And on the Elon Musk is not Doge isn't an official entity, therefore he doesn't have the right to do this. Could the administration just change his role, like make him an employee of OMB?
You know, we think that, and our case sets this forth, that someone who's given the authority that he has, it should be appointed,
Got it.
and subject to Senate confirmation. So that's the heart of one of our cases on Doge. And you definitely can't. He's not authorized to access the private, sensitive information of Americans.
Okay, let's talk about the Department of Education for a moment. Stunningly, the administration is trying to effectively shut it down without the power to shut it down.
Right.
You've joined a suit addressing this. Would you explain it to us a little bit? And just the practical question: once they've made these moves, even if you succeed, what can be saved? What can be done at that point?
Yeah, the Trump administration and honestly, the Trump campaign had indicated their contempt for the Department of Education, their plan and desire to abolish it and to completely dismantle it. They hired Secretary, or they appointed Secretary McMahon to put that into place, and so they want to destroy the Department of Education. This has been known. This has been telegraphed. This has been signaled throughout the campaign and continued through the actual action, which is a reduction in force of essentially half of the employees, which completely guts the Department of Education and its critical services like supporting poor kids, providing special education, enforcing the civil rights of students, providing vocational and tech ed opportunities, college grants to provide access to college for those who need the support. And so our case argues that they are abolishing the Department of Education, even though it was created by Congress, funded by Congress, and they don't have the authority to do that. This is an Article 1 congressional area of jurisdiction and authority, and this is what the president and his administration have done regularly. They've tried to trespass on and infringe upon congressional authority, to usurp their authority. The executive branch wants Congress's authority, and they want to use it, but they can't. It's unlawful. It violates the separation of powers and the U.S. Constitution, as well as some other federal laws. So we presented that to the court. We're hopeful that we get a restraining order. The result is we could stop the dismantling of the Department of Education. We can make sure it stays intact until and unless Congress acts. Congress can only reduce or significantly or abolish the Department of Education. The executive branch cannot.
I want to follow up on that, but before we do, let's just talk about one more case that I think we must address in our time, which is the birthright citizenship
Yeah.
case. You have joined a suit trying to bar the administration from stripping people who are born here of their citizenship. Um, I two questions. Like, give us an update. Where does that stand? And also, if the administration succeeds, what would that mean for states? Would you, as the attorney general, have to, I don't know, deny people who have American citizenship because they were born here the rights and privileges that come with that?
Yeah, that's what it seeks to do. I mean, this case is wildly unlawful, completely blatantly unconstitutional, and it was one of the first acts that Trump, um, one of the first executive orders he issued. It was the day of his inauguration. So this is how he is starting his presidency, by attacking the U.S. Constitution, by attacking U.S. citizens, children who have the right to citizenship because they're born on American soil. That is black letter law. It is foundational. It's in the U.S. Constitution, plain and unambiguously. It has been upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court multiple times. If you're born in the United States, you're a U.S. citizen, period, full stop, end of story. And with an executive order, a stroke of a Sharpie, he tried to end that, tried to amend the Constitution through an executive order. There's a way to amend the Constitution. You need a constitutional convention. You need 2/3 of both houses, three-fourths of the states to support it, not an executive order by the president. But it showed his contempt for the law and the Constitution on day one, and showed exactly what he's willing to do. And he made a promise that he would end birthright citizenship on the campaign trail. We made a promise. I made a promise I would sue him and take him to court if he tried. And so we did. And the court said and did exactly what we expected it to. It said this is one of the most this is one of the clearest cases that this judge has seen in 4 decades on the bench. It's a blatant violation of the Constitution. Even questioned the U.S. DOJ attorneys how they could come before him and make these arguments, and stopped and halted the implementation of this executive order. If it was implemented, then in California, we have about 25,000, by our estimations, babies who would be born in California who would be entitled to birthright citizenship who would not have it. They would not have a passport. They couldn't vote. They couldn't work certain jobs. They could be deported at any time. They wouldn't have access to certain support from government, like food programs or housing programs or healthcare programs. And so he's literally attacking babies who have a constitutional right to citizenship, and depriving them of those critical rights and privileges.
It's remarkable. One more quick one, and then I saw you filed something about abortion services being denied to veterans potentially. Is that a pending issue right now that we're not aware of?
That's developing now. We believe that there's a rule that the Trump administration will try to revoke that provides for counseling and support to reproductive services for our veterans. We asked for a meeting to discuss this issue, to talk about how important it is to our veterans. And I will say that there's an attack on veterans. There's an attack on their rights and their freedoms. Veterans who work in the federal government, for example, the veterans who are served by the federal government, by the VA, they have been deprived of their services and of their jobs by um, these unlawful federal terminations, which we've been able to challenge and halt and stop. But there's something new every day. One of the new things today is stripping away reproductive healthcare services to our veterans.
So, last question. I could go on with you. There's so much more that you're doing, but it just seems you're uniquely situated in this moment as somebody who's so steeped in constitutional law, able to file these cases, has an immigration story that's your own, and parents who taught you the power of individuals who aren't elected to make a difference in the world.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts or insight or inspiration into why we're not seeing more activism in America right now? And or what is the opportunity for regular people to do something at this moment?
Yeah, thank you for that. For me, this is the most important moment and the most important job I've ever had. And I'm gonna lean in and give everything I got, all the gas in the tank, all my passion, all my effort, all my energy. And I have a role. I have a direct. I stand directly between Trump's unlawful actions and the harm it would visit on Americans. And I'm grateful to have that opportunity to protect Californians, stand up for their rights, stand up for their freedoms. And you don't need a title to make a difference. You don't need to be in elected office to fight. People, my parents have showed me that everyday people banded together can do anything. And so it's important that we fight together. And it's also important that we recognize our agency. People power is the most potent power in our democracy. It's what our democracy is based on. People will always have the first and the last word. Trump's bosses are not his billionaire buddies or multinational corporations. They are you and me and us, the people of this country. We determine what happens next. We will write the next chapter. There's a lot of this story still to be written, the story of American democracy. And whether the fact that we will have challenges is not a surprise. What is important is what we do next. And we have faced many challenges. We faced civil wars and world wars and international pandemics and terrorist attacks on American soil. And we had a president before that was not fond of following the law, and a president now who is not either. And so it's what we do next and what we demand and how we hold people accountable. But we must stay engaged. We must stay focused. We cannot withdraw. We cannot get weary. We have to stay in this fight. I had a friend, Attorney General Chris Mays, who said three things are really important right now: courts, where our AGs are fighting back; crowds, people showing up and with their presence, hitting the streets like the Women's March and in Trump 1.0, and showing in en masse how we are not accepting what is unacceptable, how we can never normalize what is so abnormal, and courage. We have to stand up and fight. Some of these law firms that you mentioned that are cutting deals, that's not courage, that's not fighting. You have to stand on your rights and protect them and defend them, even if there is a risk, even if you're being bullied. Don't give in to the bluff or the bullying. We have to fight, and everyone can and everyone should. And that's how we're going to get through this.
Amazing message. One last thing, just so people understand, you represent California as Attorney General, but people might be watching from all over the country. Do regular people in states have the right to contact their Attorney General and say, hey, you should know what's going on? And is that a thing?
It is a thing, and we get that all the time. Gotten a lot more outreach from everyday people now because they're concerned, they're worried. You can go to oag.ca.gov, our website, and you can send us a message there. You can reach out to us. We're a big office. We have a lot of reach. We know a lot of what's going on, and we do not know everything. We want to hear from you. We want to hear from you about your concerns. If you have concerns about your rights being violated, something that's developing that we need to know about. We want to work with you. We think we're at our best when we're working with our constituents and fighting for them and hearing from them. So please reach out to us.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General, so much for your time and for your work. And I would love to do this again at some point when we can update on where some of your cases are.
I would be honored. Thank you for having me, Jessica. A real
Thank
pleasure.
you. Have a
Thank
great
you.
day.
You
Bye.
too. Bye
Bye,
bye.
everyone.
Bye.